Straight from South Africa. This is the strange and mysterious world with your hosts, Lee Stratum and William Collinson.
Welcome to Strange and Mysterious World. This is Lee and William. This is season 1, episode 17. And we will be chatting to Seth Shostack in a few minutes now. He is the head astronomer for SETI. Can't wait to get him on. But before we do, your shooting has been taking quite some time from you this last couple of weeks. And you've been finishing at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night every day. How are you feeling?
Yeah, geez, I'm pretty beat. I'm pretty tired. So I hope I'll be here today. Lucky that long string of questions. I hope you can hold the fort.
We've got them ready. Seth, how's it?
I think that should be okay.
Yeah, there you go. Looking good, Seth.
Where are you guys? In the UK? You sound like you're in the UK.
No, we're South Africa.
South Africa. Right,
we're miles away. I wanted to try and get you in the morning because I know you've got an evening dinner with your wife tonight. So I wanted to try and get you in the morning.
True. Okay. Yeah. Right. Are we going to do this in Afrikaans?
Kan jy 'n bietjie van die taal praat?
Well, a little bit.
Okay, that's really cool.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
Okay.
All right. So, Seth, please, man. I kind of did a bit of an introduction for you a little bit earlier. So you'll probably if you do listen to the podcast, you'll hear that. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to ask you, man. I'm going to get straight into the business. When I first heard of SETI, and I was young, and I'm talking about now in the 70s, I was so excited because I never knew that something like this existed. And I've always believed that there's something out there, always, from when I can remember, I've believed in these things. And, I thought we got to find something. We got to find it so quick. We got to find it definitely. But there's been silence, like complete silence. So when you first started working at SETI, what were your ideas? What were your thoughts? What was it that drew you to go to SETI? Why did you land up going to SETI?
Well, I think primarily because it's a big picture question, whether there are aliens out there or not, right?
Yeah.
I mean, most jobs don't deal with really big picture questions. I mean, you're repairing cars or selling insurance or whatever. All that's fine. But here you're asking a question that, people have been interested in ever since they looked up at the sky. So it is a big picture question, and it's an opportunity because never before in human history, right, have we had the ability to try and find a signal. Like, that's something new. The fact that you could prove that there are aliens. So I think that's what appealed to me about it. And of course, obviously, I was interested in astronomy. I studied astronomy. So I think that's it. I think it was, like being the first person to go to the moon or something like that. It's a situation that only happens one time in the history of humanity. And, finding proof of the aliens is like that.
Okay. So now the path that you want, because you were an astronomer. Were your heart set to go to work at SETI? Was that your plan from the beginning?
No, not at all. I've had too many plans. And besides, what I studied in school, grad school in any case, was galaxies and how galaxies spin around. And I actually found that galaxies spin too quickly, which is an important thing, it turns out, because that indicates that there's something called missing matter in the universe. But it wasn't about SETI, although I have to say that every time I had some extra telescope time, I'd be at the observatory late at night. I'd usually be the only one on the site. And I'd occasionally, just look up the coordinates of some nearby star systems and observe them. Didn't tell anybody, just did it, just in case. I didn't find anything that way, but it could have been different.
Okay. All right. And then, looking at our technologies now. So I think if I can recall, Sputnik 1 was in 1957. We launched it into space, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
So if you're looking from that time to today, which is now 67 years on, our technology is pretty new. Where do you see our technology in the next 67 years?
Well, the predictions made about technology are usually, in a sense, very obvious, and mine will be as well. And that is that what we're doing now, we'll be able to do more quickly, right? That's usually how technology proceeds. Suddenly, you can do it better. In this case, better means you'd be able to look over a wider band, a wider bit of the radio spectrum, if you will, the radio dial. That's certainly going to happen, and you'll have more sensitivity because we'll build bigger radio telescopes and that sort of thing. If you're talking about, close to 70 years, then we might even find the money to build an array of antennas on the backside of the moon, which would be a good thing because that's the one place in the universe that's permanently shielded from all the radio noise that comes off of Earth and really gets in the way of your search. So, to say, yes, the search will be better, I think that's pretty obvious. But what you can't predict very well are developments in science that really change the way you think about the whole subject. And that's hard to say. I mean, obviously, the best thing to happen would be to find a signal, right? Because then we could look at the signal and decide if there's anything interesting in it. And there's some message, presumably there'd be a message. And that would change everything on Earth, I suspect. But, you can predict that. I bet everybody a cup of coffee it'll happen. But there's no guarantee.
Yeah, because I've heard your predecessor was always the 10 year stories. Next 10 years, next 10 years, next 10 years. You're not like that though. You're like.
I'm interested in the predecessor.
Yeah, the guy. What's the guy's name, man? The one that your Frank Drake.
Oh, Frank Drake.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's where my prediction came from, actually. Because Frank, I noticed when I joined the Institute, Frank Drake would get asked this question frequently.
Yeah.
Essentially, invariably. And I figured he would say, well, nobody knows, but he didn't. He said, well, I think within so many years.
Yeah.
And I actually did a little bit of work before making my predictions, which includes the cup of coffee if you win.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. And then look, obviously us being pretty new in space, with our current technology, I know we're looking for life as we know our type of life forms. And this analogy always comes to me. It's like you've got a caveman that's in the forest trying to yell at a Boeing going past, trying to communicate with it. It's never going to happen. So what I'm trying to get at is our technology, I don't even think is even close to trying to discover these things that are probably light years ahead of where we are currently. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there are maybe civilizations that may have something on our path, on our line of where we are currently?
Well, keep in mind, Lee, there are roughly 1 trillion planets, right, in the Milky Way galaxy. That's our galaxy. We can see 200 billion other galaxies, each with 1 trillion planets. So while most of these planets are not very interesting when it comes to life, when you have such huge numbers, you're going to have a lot that are suitable, that presumably do have life. So the idea that you might find some evidence of that isn't such a long shot, in my opinion, right? If there were only 10 planets we could look at and hope to find a signal, then I would agree with you. There's no guarantee you're going to find anything at all. But when you're talking about, trillions per galaxy, and there are, I'm sure, trillions of galaxies, but there are at least hundreds of billions.
Yeah.
Then, it's like buying an awful lot of lottery tickets. Most of them are going to be losers, but not all of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you've got a great idea. Your idea is to look for technology rather than life forms, because if they've managed to get out into space, their technology would be detected by us pretty easily. I think that's actually a fantastic idea. So the technologies that you guys are looking for, I'm assuming, I have heard you talking about those, what they're called, Dyson spheres that go around around their suns and, those kind of things. Those would be pretty easy to detect from Earth, though, wouldn't they?
Well, it depends on how big a Dyson sphere they've built. Dyson spheres, for those who don't know, is just a way of trying to capture most of the energy radiated by your home star, if you will, by surrounding it with a sphere of solar collectors, or a partial sphere at least. And those actually are not necessarily so easy to find because to begin with, they're kind of dark looking from the outside, right? Because they're enclosing the star. But what they do is they warm up a little bit because of the heat of the star. And so you see an infrared source, which you hadn't noticed before. But it isn't going to look very different than a warmed up planet or a bunch of asteroids, or there are a lot of other things that it could look very similar to. So it's not so clear that you're going to find a Dyson sphere, even if there are some, but it's at least one thing you can try and find.
Yeah. Okay. The James Webb telescope, which launched in 2021, which look, the images that have come back are absolutely fantastic. But what sensors have they actually put on there that assists you guys with trying to find life out there?
Well, I think the primary one would be the fact that the James Webb Space Telescope, which is an infrared telescope, it's pretty good at finding planets. And planets are, again, really hard to find. I mean, obviously the ones in our own solar system we know about, but finding them in somebody else's solar system is quite hard because they're pretty dark, right? They shine only by reflected light. So compared to a star, they're pretty dim. But the infrared capabilities of the James Webb Space Telescope are such that it can find planets, under certain circumstances. And I think that the biggest contribution James Webb could make to SETI, this is strictly speculative, but on my opinion, from my point of view, I would say the biggest thing it can do is give us a better handle on how many planets out there really are there. I mean, how many planets are there in the universe, and how many of them are the type that could support life? I think that's the biggest thing it'll do. But I mean, it could find the aliens too, depending on what the aliens have built.
Are you allowed to have access to the James Webb scope? Don't you? I've heard some of your discussions where your funding is pretty minimal, and I know you've got to purchase time on certain telescopes. Are you allowed to have access to the James Webb scope, or do you have to actually come up with funds to try and use the software and whatever it is to do your research?
No, Lee, you have access to the James Webb Space Telescope.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. No,
Okay.
it's a it was funded by tax dollars, so it doesn't cost anything to use. Not directly, you don't have to pay James Webb, but of course you have to have the right equipment and the expertise to use it. But you can put in a proposal and say, look, I need 100 hours of time on this telescope to do this. And if the science review committee for the telescope says this is a good idea, it'll produce some interesting science, then you get the time. It's very straightforward. It's like the Hubble Space Telescope is the same way too. Anybody can use the Hubble, but you have to have a good idea.
Okay. All right. Will, do you want to ask something? It sounded like you want to ask something.
No, carry on. I'll ask some stuff at the back. Really.
Okay, cool. We're going to head off onto artificial intelligence. All right. So with the rate we're moving now, and Elon Musk's ideas of where we're going with artificial intelligence, look, it's sometimes a little bit scary with his ideas. However, it could be beneficial, I suppose. It depends on which way we go with it. But what are your thoughts on AI? Because I know they've got these experiments that they're trying to do with consciousness onto a hard drive, and they're trying to put your memories onto a hard drive. They're trying to put these chips in your brain and all sorts of stuff. And I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan at all. Have you watched any of these Star Trek series, Seth?
Yes, I've even been on panels with some of the people who play the lead characters at Star Trek.
Okay, yeah, it's because they've got this the Borg. Now the Borg are obviously, for some of our listeners that don't know, the Borg are half human and half artificial intelligence. It seems that our race, our civilization, is heading that direction. What are your thoughts on AI? Do you think it's do you think it's something that we should steer clear of? Do you think it's something that we could use to benefit us?
Yeah, well, I'm quite sure we're not going to steer clear of it. I mean, you may wish to do that, but you'll only wish to do that up until the point when you notice that all your competitors, both in commercial markets and everywhere else are using it to their benefit, and you've essentially hobbled your abilities to do anything. The question is, at what point does artificial intelligence become an actual threat to humans? I mean, you can always pull out the plug. You don't have to keep it running. There are questions about that. I mean, I myself wonder, well, does this mean that humans are sort of out of the loop in the future, in the near future, and they're no longer running the planet? That could be the case. I mean, it's just in a way the next stage in evolution, right?
Yeah.
Right. Rather than having some sort of creature that runs things, we'll have this machine run things. And I think that in the current context, maybe what's most interesting about that is that if you think that this makes sense, and I do in any case, then that means that the aliens you're likely to find are also likely to be artificial intelligence.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. That's because I thought our next step, if we're going to hit from the Borg, our next step from the Borg is the Terminator, the T2s. So our whole physique is now different. We don't need hearts and lungs. We don't need this biology that we have currently. We are all some sort of material that these things are made out of. We've got our memories, sure, but then we'd be able to live on any planet. We could live on Pluto. We can live on Mercury. We can live wherever, because it's not really going to affect our biology as much. And that may be, I was thinking about this, and this actually may be, we might not be finding these things, and we're looking at a plane and we say, nah, there's no ways life can be there. But it might not be life as we know it. It might be artificial life.
Yeah, well, I think that makes perfect sense. I mean, again, we're kind of limited when we think of aliens. We usually think of biological aliens. That's because most of the authors that have written about encounters with aliens picture some sort of living thing. But as you point out, the AIs don't have to be alive to be clever, right? And they have tremendous advantages. I mean, you think of what's the use plan, if you will, for humans? All right, you get born, you have some fun for 6 years, then you go to school for 20 or 30 years, don't have quite as much fun. Then you go out into the world and take a job for a while, and then you die and they put you in the ground. That's, I mean, I don't want to make it sound too glamorous there, but it is a little disappointing. Whereas the machine just can sit on a desk and maybe cogitate or think more useful things than all the humans put together. It's definitely the way to go, and it doesn't die. So yeah, I think that the artificial intelligence just may take over the world. I know that sounds a little melodramatic, but I think in the sense that I'm talking about, yes, it can and it will. And if it's going to happen here, it's going to happen elsewhere too. So I suspect that if we do find the aliens, we should not be surprised to find that they have wires coming out the back.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Then we all become.
I'm going to take. Sorry, what's that, Will?
Then we all become batteries, like in the Matrix.
Yeah, battery operator. Taking a step a little bit back. Let's go back in time now. So a lot of theory has it that we were genetically engineered by some sort of ET race many, many moons back, some couple of 100,000 years ago. And we are a byproduct of this thing. And obviously, if you look at the Bible and the Mahabharata and all these kinds of things, it kind of mentions these type of things with flying cities, the Vimanas and those kind of things. What are your thoughts on those? I know that people don't really ask you those questions, but what are your thoughts on these ancient civilizations?
I mean, it generates a lot of interest. I mean, Ancient Aliens is a very popular television show here. I don't know about in South Africa, and it postulates that there are aliens out there that have been around for a long time. But basically, it's just a framework for a TV series about very human-like interactions. Nothing unreasonable about that. But being engineered by another race, or even by machines, or something from another planet, to me, that there's a lot. I think you need a lot more evidence if you're going to say that, because we're very closely related to your cat or your dog, right? And if you take the skeletons of a human and place it down next to the skeleton of essentially any animal on the planet, Well, they both have spines and rib cages and skulls. I mean, the design is very, very similar. And so that sounds to me like everything on Earth is related. And at a level, a molecular level, looking at the DNA, there's no doubt that we're related to everything else that's alive on this planet. So if the aliens really seeded the Earth with humans, to begin with, why did they wait 4 billion years for the human, right? There's been life on this planet for 4 billion years. And it wouldn't all look like it came from the same organism. I think we look too much like everything else to support that theory. But it's not nice fodder for a science fiction story or movie.
Yeah. Well, look, I must say, we had a chat to Avi last week, and you guys are very similar in thought. You're very logical, which is great. So back to the Star Trek analogy, you like our Spock to our Kirk. You always need the logic in the conversation to get the things going. We fly by the seat of our pants, eh, William?
Yeah. Well, I think that's just the result of studying science. I don't know that there's anything very miraculous about it.
But you've always got the two different people in the world. You've got the people that are logical, which is fantastic to have, and you've got the guys that dream a lot. They dream maybe too much.
On that point, Seth,
Yeah.
do you find any of the ufology interesting, or follow it secretly, or
follow it secretly? Why would I do it secretly if I were doing it?
You might be the tin hat guy. I mean, you don't want to be the tin hat guy, especially in your line of work.
Well, yeah, I don't know many scientists who think that we're being visited, but polls show that something like, I don't know, I guess it's more than half of the American public thinks that Earth is being visited by aliens, something on that order.
Yeah.
So it's a very popular idea, and it's a great, beginning of a storyline. So it has that advantage for television, at least, and the movies. But if we were being visited, I don't think that the evidence would be so incredibly cryptic as it is now, right? If you go to your local science museum and, you look for the exhibit about visitors from space, you probably won't find anything because there's no science in it. We don't have any good evidence for that. And if they were visiting for a long time, according to, UFO lore, they've been here since 1947, I think. That's a long time, but they haven't done anything. They don't kill people. They don't help us out. They don't cure diseases. They don't do anything. So from my point of view, if we're being visited by UAPs or UFOs or whatever you want to call them, they've been a big disappointment so far.
Yeah, sure. But that the Nimitz incident with the Tic Tac, they call it the Tic Tac with David Fraser and that. And also with Dave Grush when he goes to Parliament in America there, and he before Congress, and he gives his statement. I mean, even though he doesn't really have any evidence, but he says what do you think of all of that? Let's start with the Tic Tac. What do you think of the Tic Tac incident?
Well, the videos, there are 3 videos, one of them being Tic Tac, and they're kind of puzzling. They've all been made by gun sight cameras on American fighter jets. And, you can explain them all, actually, very prosaically, usually with simply phenomena that are intrinsic to the gun sight cameras, right? You don't see too many of these videos from commercial airliners. I don't know that they even have cameras on, pointing forward, but, there are other kinds of aircraft that do. And more than that, there are tens of thousands, really hundreds of thousands of amateur astronomers throughout the world, not just in the United States, they're everywhere, right? And they, if it's a clear night, a lot of them are outside with their telescopes and they don't seem to see these things, right? You don't see too many reports around amateur astronomers. We have spacecraft, something like 8,000 or something, that are actually still working, and most of them are pointed back down toward Earth, and they don't see these things either. And you can say, oh, well, the government's covering it up. Americans love that idea, conspiracy ideas, because they can explain anything, but they're not all government satellites to begin with, and they're certainly not all American satellites. So I would say that the evidence for this, while it's an intriguing story, I don't see any good evidence for it at all.
Yeah, sure. And then also just said yourself, have you ever looked up at the sky? I mean, without all of your equipment and that, and ever seen something strange yourself?
Sure, even with the equipment. What's the equipment?
Well, with the equipment, it's very much more difficult because
Yeah.
we're using radio telescopes, and the telescopes we use, any telescope, has a very small, view of the sky. It's like looking at the sky through a soda straw or something. So the
Okay.
chances that anything that's in, say, our atmosphere would fly by you is pretty small. So the fact you don't see anything there doesn't actually surprise me. I don't think that's terribly significant. But what is significant are the thousands of other satellite cameras that are trained on the Earth, right? I mean, you look at your nightly weather report, right? They have these photos of the clouds over Africa and so forth. I mean, maybe they wouldn't see something like this because it'd be too small. But those are just the weather satellites. There are many others that are used by the Defense Department for, reconnaissance of a different sort. And they would see things. And I just think that if somebody was visiting us, there would be evidence of that.
Okay, but and you yourself personally, just looking up at the sky, have you ever seen anything strange that you're like, wow, that's pretty interesting?
Well, not since I was about 8 or 9 years old. I haven't. No.
Okay, what did you see? Can you
No, it's just something moving through the star fields, right? A little point of light. But when you get older, you realize that those are satellites. Those are made by humans.
What an anticlimax of the
Well, you were expecting something to land on the White House, man. Well,
no. I'm just saying, like, he saw it was like, as a kid, you're probably like, wow, that's so cool. And then like later on in his life, it's finds out it's satellites.
damn it, it's a satellite. Yeah. So, Seth, a quick one, man. If you look at your life where you are currently, if you had a time machine and you had to pop back in time, would you ever change anything? Is there things that you regret doing, things that you regret maybe you should have done with regards to your work?
Well, I don't know. I think that the latter part of the 19th century was maybe an interesting time to be around because of the rapid development of science and technology. And that might have been fun to see. But honestly, I mean, if you had the chance to go to another period of time in Earth's history, I would choose something, 100 or 200 years in the future, not just out of curiosity, but also because they could fix any disease you got.
Yeah.
I'd be in favor of that.
And then last question on my side, Will, before maybe if you want to ask some things. If the funding for SETI is pretty poor from the government side, am I right on that? The guys don't really give you too much funding.
No.
But isn't it beneficial for them to actually rather give you more funding than waste too much money on weaponry that we're trying to kill each other? Should we not try and use a little bit more of the funds to try and find our neighbors than to kill each other?
Well, that's a political statement, and that's what you might do if you were elected to office. Not everybody would do that. Many people here would say, look, job number one for the government is to keep you from being killed by some other hostile nation. So, that's a political thing that has not much to do with the science, and certainly not much to do with aliens, unless the aliens have decided to invade, which so far they have not.
Yeah. All right. So the funding is pretty poor, but if somebody wanted to get involved with funding, how would they do that?
Well, anybody can go to the SETI Institute's website, SETI.org. And, we try to make it easy for you to donate to the cause if you want to do that.
All right. I'll put the link on our site.
Yes.
Just in case. Yeah, 100%.
Thank
Without
you.
a doubt. No problem.
Well, Seth, just for our listeners, can you just explain like what the technology or the methods you are using to try and make contact? What is the technology?
Yeah. Well, what we do is simply listen. We don't broadcast messages to the aliens and say, hey, get in touch with us or anything like that. The main reason we don't, some people would say, oh, it's dangerous to do that. I don't know if it's dangerous or not, but we don't do it because it would take too long, right? Even if the aliens are at 100 light years distance, that would be still relatively close for, a star system. But say it was 100 light years, just to make the math easy. That means if you broadcast a transmission, hi, we're the Earthlings, we just love to get in touch with you guys. It would take 100 years for that signal to reach them, and another 100 years for their reply to get here. By which point, 200 years have gone by, and your funding is probably gone. So, you're confined to looking at the nearest star systems, and not a whole lot of them, unless you assume that the aliens are broadcasting, not for your benefit, but for some other reason, and you just eavesdrop on those signals. So that's fundamentally what SETI usually does. You compile a list of the 1,000 or million nearest star systems, and one after another we observe them with big antennas, radio telescopes, and see if there's any signals coming from that direction. It's pretty straightforward in principle.
All right, but like you said, I think you guys scan a very small section of the sky. How long does it take before you get across the whole, our whole scope?
Well, it depends on how many stars in each part of the sky you're going to look at. Right? Yeah. Most stars are far away. You look at the nearest ones first, of course, because the signals will be stronger if the aliens are closer. So we've looked at probably 10,000 of the nearest star systems already, but maybe we were looking at the wrong frequency, or maybe our receivers didn't have enough sensitivity. So you keep doing many of the same things over and over with better equipment, and maybe at some point you actually find a signal that would change the name of the game, of course.
No, 100%.
I remember Steve Hawkins saying, don't remember. I mean, you never know what's actually true online or not, but there was a thing that he said apparently that's why guys don't send signals out to space, because that's dangerous, because like you don't want them coming to us.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that Stephen Hawking made some comment along those lines, but if he didn't, there are many of other people that do as well. However, if you're really paranoid and you feel, look, this is not a good idea, don't make any transmissions to the sky. You should, turn off the TV channels, and the radar, and
radio.
Yeah, because apparently, I mean, our radio signals are just going into space anyway. I mean, those things.
Yeah, they do. Everything goes.
Yeah. Well, that's right. Although it has to be said that what we call AM radio in the United States, medium wave in Europe, they call it, that doesn't go into space very well because it bounces off the ionosphere. But that's a technical matter. Television does go out into space. Radar does go out into space. And if the aliens have a big enough receiving setup, they could find that.
Yeah, 100%.
So the nearby ones know we're here. Put it that
way. Cool. Yeah. Anything else, Will, from your side?
No, I'm good, Lee. I'm good.
All right. Well, fantastic. Seth, it's been so cool to have you. I'm sorry that I woke you up so early.
Yeah.
I did try and get you before. I know you're busy this evening, so I didn't want to waste your evening with us while you could be having dinner with your wife.
Okay.
Happy anniversary, by the way.
Is it my anniversary?
Yeah, I think you said it was your anniversary dinner.
Oh my goodness!
Check quickly. Check.
It's not an anniversary, but it is getting close to her birthday. So.
Okay. Well, I've reminded you about the birthday. Okay.
Yes. Yes. Terrific.
All right. Fantastic. Seth, thank you very much for coming on board.
Thanks so much, Seth. Really lovely talking to you, man. Appreciate it.
You guys were fun to talk to too.
Great. Thanks, Seth. Cheers.
Bye.
Cheers, Seth. There was a thing. He said something, but I didn't want to push him too much. About the Tic Tac. Is it about the Tic Tac? And he was saying like, but it's not reliable, the gum cameras. But then I wanted to say, but Dave Fraser and like all of the eyewitnesses, I mean, he was looking out of the plane. He was looking at the coming out of the water, and then his co-pilot that only came out like only the last few years, she came out, and because she kept silent, she didn't want to talk about it, but now she's only come out now. And Ryan Graves, did Ryan Graves have eyesight? Did he have witnessed it personally? I can't remember. Or was he just seen it on the radar? But anyway,
no, I think he saw it on radar.
So I didn't want to push it, but like I just I was just thinking, there was eyewitness from, especially David Fraser, and I mean it's so funny because people go like, but it could be anything, like he could have seen. But I mean, he's a trained pilot. He's like, he knows what's in the air. Like that's what his job is, to know what's in the air, like at vast distances from our side. So obviously, what he's seen is something that he can't explain, and it was quite close, apparently. So,
but I think the problem that he's having is the fact that there's so many cameras pointed on Earth from space and from all over the place, but these things don't tend to pick up much. I
No,
mean,
but
yeah,
it's
you
like
do check when you're looking at the space station footage every now and then you see something, but yeah, it's weird.
it's like the guys that want to rob your houses and that. They know where all the cameras are, man.
Yeah. Like, hey, watch that camera there, man. We got to slide underneath that one and slip into the house through the toilet.
Spray painted.
Eh? Yeah, shit.
Okay, cool.
Right. Well, yeah, that's it for tonight, guys. Thank you for joining us. A little bit of a shorter one tonight. Hopefully interesting for everybody out there. And thank you to all our listeners. We're already on 1,900 downloads. It's awesome, guys. Thank you very much for supporting and downloading and listening to us. And if anybody's got suggestions, yeah, feel free to send it to us. You'll find us on Podbean and Google Podcasts and Apple Podcasts and everywhere else. And yeah, that's it. Well, thank you. And yeah, have a good evening, man. We'll chat to you next week.
Yeah, thanks, D. Catch you later.
Lekker, buddy. Cheers,
Later,
guys.
bye.
Bye.